Hi, and welcome to my teaching video for at-home practice for intermediate level students. This is what I would hope and expect that intermediate level students should be doing during their practice sessions at home between lessons. So this is for intermediate level students, which means that they've had probably at least 2 to 3 years of piano lessons already, either with another teacher or with me, and that you are working through level 3, 4, maybe middle of level 2 type of lesson books, whatever method you're in. And at this point, you should be practicing 4 to 5 times a week, and each practice session should be anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, depending on what all you are working on, especially if you're working through 30-piece challenge music, music history, or preparing for a recital. Your practice times are going to be longer. So 5 times a week is ideal for at least 30 minutes, hopefully 45 minutes, all 5 of those times. Also, when you practice, it's important to try and practice as soon after your lesson as you are able to. So within the first 24 hours after your lesson is ideal because you retain more information. And the sooner you practice after your lesson, the better your subsequent practices are. And remember that the frequency of practice sessions always trumps the length of practice sessions. So it would be better to practice 5 times for 30 minutes than to practice, say, 3 times and put in, like 45 minutes or an hour each. It's a whole lot better to practice more often for shorter periods of time. Okay, so having said that, the next step is to talk a little bit about what I want you to have when you are practicing. So first of all, make sure that you've removed as many distractions as possible. My cell phone is nowhere to be found. I am not texting, I'm not answering calls, I'm not on social media. My phone is off. It's gone. So please don't be distracted by anything, especially your phone or your tablet or any other electronics during your practice sessions. There's no TV blaring, there's no radio blaring. I've removed as many distractions as possible for my practice time. And that's very important so that I don't get interrupted and lose my train of thought, especially the first time you sit down to practice after a lesson. The next thing I've made sure that I've done is I have all my books and I have all my materials out in front of me. I have my scale book, I have all my music, and I have my piano notebook that has all the different things written down in it that I need to be working on. I have that handy. So I write down notes in your notebook every week about which songs I want you to be practicing and what specifically, including specific measures that I want you to be working on, or specific techniques that I want you to be using in those measures or in those sections of your pieces. So please have your notebook handy and have it out so that you can always refer to it every time you sit down to practice. I also have some tools handy. I have a pencil always handy for marking anything I need to mark in the music. You'll see me use that in a bit. I also have my metronome handy here, and I'll be using that as well. And at this level, you should have a metronome, whether you are using a metronome app on a tablet. Then you're allowed to have technology at the piano. If your metronome is on your tablet or your phone, you may use it for that. Or you might also have one of the small digital box metronomes, and those are just fine too. Sometimes they have a metronome and tuner combined. Okay, so when you sit down to practice, you should always start with your scales, and you can do them in any order. I like to go through them in the order of the circle of fifths, and that just kind of helps me relax, and then I don't have to worry about which scales I'm missing and which ones I'm playing. Oh, sorry, I have a pop-up here that I'm going to close. Let me try that again for you. So you should be playing 2-octave scales at this level. If you're not, you can add the second octave. Just watch your fingering. Again, I have my scale book out in front of me, and I play my scales and my chord cadences. I do all the major scales and I do minor scales. minors, there's 3 scales for every minor, so there's a little bit more work involved. If you're also starting arpeggios, that's fine too. You're welcome to include those. But it takes me about 20 minutes to run through all of my scales each day when I sit down to practice. You should be playing all of your scales, and it may take you 10 minutes or so to run through if it takes you that long at all. So the first piece that I'm working on today that I want to show you is an accompaniment piece. Actually, I'm playing for another instrument, and I'm playing the accompaniment part. And I've played through this several times before. I actually know it pretty well, but I'm spot checking now one particular place in the piece. And what I'm doing today is using the metronome. And so I'm setting the metronome up. The speed for this is Largo, which is actually quite slow. And Largo goes up to 60. So I've set my metronome. And what I really want to do is let the metronome go a few times and make sure I have the speed set before I play. I'm stopping there because that's the section where I really need to be careful with my speed so that I don't play too fast. I typically go way too fast through that section. I figured that out from previous practice sessions, so that's why I'm putting the metronome to it. If I were going to actually practice this in my normal practice time, what I would do next is run through it again at that speed with the metronome going, and then I would back up and start the whole piece and play through the whole thing and make sure that I connected everything and played everything at the correct speed. I'm not going to do that today, but you get the idea. That's how you incorporate metronome into your practice time. The next piece I'm working on is also, it's a very long piece. It's like 8 or 9, 10 pages. And I'm only working on one small section again, and there's a technique that I want to show you with this section in this piece. It's a piece I've worked on before, so I'm familiar with it, but I'm actually taking one section and doing something called blocking and anchoring my notes. So a lot of you have heard me talk about anchor notes. Those are when we have pieces where the left hand does a lot of moving around and plays a lot of arpeggios and broken chords. A lot of times there's a pattern to it that's repetitive. If there's not, it's even more important for us to block and to anchor our notes in the left hand. So what I've already done in my music, you can't see it, but I can, is I have written in my anchor notes. What are anchor notes? Those are the very first note or the bottom note in the left hand chord. So in this case, that is an F, and then it goes to a D, and then it comes up to the A, and then down to the E, actually E flat. So when I play this piece, the most important thing for me first to do is write in F, D, A, E, and recognize where that pattern repeats, because it repeats almost every single line. Now that I know that, all I have to do then is I'm going to block is the next thing. I've written in my anchor notes. Now I'm going to block these chords. What does that mean? It means that I'm going to play the first 3 notes of the chord. Just going to play the chord. I'm not going to play all those notes as broken chords, but I'm going to get the idea of the movement of the left hand. I'm going to lower this so that you can see maybe a little more of my left hand. So here's the blocking. Again, the pattern, F, D, A, E. And that pattern spatial feeling and relationship going, then I really do know where my left hand is in relationship at all times to the rest of the keyboard. Then what I'm going to do, once I've got my anchor notes written in and I have it blocked, then I'm going to add the rest of the left hand notes. And what I would do then is I would repeat practicing that over and over again to really block that left hand and make sure that I can play the left hand very smoothly, very correctly, very fluidly, moving up and down everywhere I need to go. Then I would spend a little bit of time adding the right hand. I'm not looking down at my left hand very much, and that went much better in terms of being able to put left and right hands together and know exactly where my left hand is and where it's supposed to be. So I would continue to practice that. I would continue to put that together, continue to do the blocking, practicing hands apart, hands together over and over in that section. And then again, because I'm only working on that small section, I'm going to put that one aside. So the next thing I want to show you is how to work on a new piece. This is a new piece that I'm going to work on. It's an Etude by Chopin. It is very difficult. You might see a lot of black here. So I first have to think about what key the song is written in. It has 4 sharps. I can see that at the beginning, and so my key signature, I already know that this is in E major. It's not the relative minor key because it's actually in the title. It's an Etude in E major by Chopin. So I know that I'm playing in 4 sharps. So a good technique to get in the habit of is play the scale of the song that you're playing in before you start. Start to analyze this piece a little bit more. I know that it's in 2/4 time, which will be important for me when I'm writing in some rhythms, especially in some of the more difficult sections. I know that there are a lot of accents, a lot of slurs in this piece. I can identify where the staccatos are. There are a lot of other types of markings, flats, sharps, naturals, a lot of things going on in this particular piece that I have to pay attention to. And so then the first thing that I'm going to do before I mark all of that is I'm actually going to think about the form of the piece. And we've gone over form quite a bit, hopefully by now. And if you're new to form, all it is taking a look at the whole song and figuring out which sections repeat and which sections are different and which sections are hard. I happen to know that this piece comes in an A-B-A format. So section A starts off at the beginning very nicely. And then section A makes an appearance again here on the 3rd page. And in the middle, we have a big mess of a section B, which is quite difficult, but very fun to play once you get it going. So a lot of you who have gone through recitals with me, especially in the spring, you know that we start with the hardest section first, and we work on that and get through that first. And that's a great technique to use when we're working toward something like a recital, because if you start with the hardest part first, and if you've been playing that for 8 weeks or 3 months or 12 months, eventually that'll be the easiest part by the time you're ready to perform it, and that's a great strategy to use. For me though, today what I'm doing is I am going to use a little bit different technique for this particular piece because I need to get a feel for the motif or the theme, the melody of the piece, which starts off in the right hand. And so all I'm doing, because the melody can get hidden and turned upside down a little bit and changed around in this piece, I'm just going to use the correct fingerings that are given to play through the melody a little bit. close attention to the right hand fingerings this time and getting a sense of the melody and the rhythm. There are some very difficult sequences in the right hand, especially in this piece, but now that I have that motif, I can start to find that all throughout the piece. It's going to modulate and change. And I can look for all sorts of patterns, and the melody and the motif are going to show up in some surprising places. So I'm going to start with that. Actually, first, I would really practice through. I would write in a couple of rhythms in a couple of places. I already have some finger numbers put in. I don't need to add any note names, but there are some other things that I am going to circle just again to remind myself what I need to be paying attention to. But most of all in this piece, it is fingerings are the key. Then the other thing that I'm going to do first off with this piece in the A section is I'm going to block the left hand, and I'm going to start off again looking for these left hand patterns. Pretty easy so far. I know that that continues for a while and then it'll change. So now that I have some of the left hand pattern figured out, again, I might write in some anchor notes, and I might actually block. And instead of playing the notes separately, I might block, 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 block. Again, I want to get the feeling of this piece and where it's going, so that's a good technique to apply to a lot of pieces, especially pieces that you're doing that are going to be more difficult. All right, I would spend a lot of time on this. I might spend a full half hour on this. I'm not going to do that tonight to bore you, but then I'm going to move on to one more piece. And this is a much easier piece. I've sight read through it a couple of times. And the technique that I really want to show you tonight is being able to count out loud while you have the metronome going, and make sure you have correct rhythms. So I have one page where I've written in actually some rhythms, because sometimes we have pieces where we have syncopated rhythms, we have complicated rhythms that we have to figure out. And so this is a good thing to do, is actually take a pencil and write in all of your counts inside the measure. Remember, your counts go inside the measures, finger numbers go outside the measures. All I'm doing is I'm writing in all of the counts inside some of these measures that have a syncopated rhythm pattern. And then once I'm done with this writing in, then what I'm going to do is slowly, very slowly, play through these to see if I can get the notes on the right counts. And I'm going to count out loud while I play. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and that was the and of 4. I'm going to do that again for you. 1 and 2 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and. So I took it very slow. I counted out loud to make sure I was getting everything correct. And if I were working on this, practicing for real for you, I would go over just that section. It's 1, 2, 3 measures many times in a row. So I've isolated that section. I've written in my counts inside the measure, and I'm counting it out loud while I'm playing it. I might also take the metronome then and start to bring it up to speed once I felt like I got enough practice time in. 1 and 2. So that's even a little too fast for where I'm at. Again, I haven't really practiced this one a whole lot yet, and I'm just trying to fit those rhythms together, but that would be the next step, is adding the metronome and slowly bringing it up to speed on the metronome. So those are some techniques and tips for you as you're working through your lesson pieces. If your 30 or 40 minutes is not up and you've practiced through everything really, really well, and you feel like, oh, that was a great practice session, but you still have more time left, I really encourage you to go back to a piece that you enjoy, a fun piece that you know well, that is relaxing and that you enjoy playing, and end your practice session with that. It's a great way to end your time at the piano. Again, you should really be practicing 4 to 5 times every single week. I know we are all busy, but make time for the piano practice, especially when you're getting ready for a recital or when you're getting ready for a competition. So those are some of the tips that I have to share with you. That's what you should be doing at home during your practice time if you are an intermediate level student. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Thank you so much.